I think you're tired anyway. I read it says James is tired.
Yep, yep. So I had a question, but I wanted to throw out just a response to the Rebecca's
Sure.
passages. It assumes that three events happened simultaneously, which
Sure.
is bad hermeneutics and a bad assumption. But I do get why you, as a Muslim, would want to throw that at a Christian, because they're bringing up a moral issue at you, and I don't know if morality is the best way that religion
Hmm.
should be going after each other. Because if let's say my conception of God is right, or your conception of God is right, it doesn't really matter, because that conception of God set the moral standard. And
Hmm.
so even if, like, God was ordering people's heads chopped off, which I don't think either of us would say our gods do it,
Easy
we
there,
would be
guy.
an
Easy.
affront. We'd be affront
Let's
to
not
God
let's not
in
bring
that.
Amulek into this. All right.
um, so my question for you is, I've
Yeah.
talked a lot about the Hadith, and I'm trying to learn the science of
Good.
it, which
Good.
is very, very complex.
Sure.
One of the objections this gentleman in our chat, young Muhammad, brought up to me was that
Hmm.
if you say that Aisha was not accurately able to account for her age, and there's several narrations where she describes her being either 6 and 9, one where she says, I think 7 and 9. So
Sure.
the argument is, if she wasn't able to remember that, how can you still state with confidence that she had a good memory?
Excellent. Easy question. Um, and I answered this earlier in the show, but I'll answer it again. So, when we talk about an authentic hadith, what are we authenticating? That the person said what they said at that time, right? Meaning, right now, James, if I told you that I'm 40, right, for example, right? And you were asked of my age, and you said, Osman said he's 40, right? What you said is correct. Maybe I was looking at dog years, or I was looking at it incorrectly myself, but you're reporting what I told you was correct, right? So that is not a criticism of James. It would be a criticism of Osman, right? Yes? No? Maybe? You
Yeah,
with me?
I just didn't
All
want to
right.
interrupt. I try to,
No, no,
be
no, no, no.
polite.
I want to keep this, interactive. I like there to be interaction, right? So when you look at yourself, James, and I'm not going to ask you your age again. I don't want to, shock the people that you look so young and so on. So if I ask you your age, how would you tell me how old you are? Right? You would either look at your passport or a birth certificate, or ask your mom or dad or grandfather or older brother, or so on, because you were not conscious at the time of your birth to be able to record the age, right?
So,
But if,
so what you would
go ahead.
say is that, if I understand right, you're saying that she had a good memory, but she had
Excellent memory.
no idea how old she was when
No,
she
no, I did
gave
not say
that.
that. No, no, no.
But the only
I
reason why I say
believe.
that is because
Sure.
if it says that her sister was this much older than her at death,
Mhm.
then they had to have known their ages to a degree. So if
Sure.
if they didn't even
And
know the
again, that,
birth, how can we say
sure.
the
So,
rest?
as I said, even the age of Asma radiallahu anha, the older sister, is hotly debated, because these things were not important to the Arab at the time. They had no calendars. They had no, other than naming years after events, they had no way to count for years, right? Because we are looking at this from a perspective of saying, okay, 2021 and 2020 and 1980 and 1998. But imagine if we had no numbering system, right? If we had nothing like that. And the Arab didn't. So you would be relying upon whatever somebody told you. There is no way that she had no idea how old she was, but there is also a clear possibility, as the scholars have discussed in the past, that she was not exact about her age because she was not physically aware at the time of birth of what age it would be, right? As you were not, and as I was not. When I need to know my age, I ask somebody, right? I'll give you an example. Um, my name is Osman. Who named me? Right? My grandmother told me I named you. My mother told me I named you. My father told me I named you. Right? So me, I cannot go back and say which one of them named me because I was not in my senses. Right? So if I say my grandmother named me because she's the one that told me that, and it turns out that my father named me, it would be not a criticism of me, because I was only going by what somebody had told me, right? So if she was told that you are about this age of age and she conveyed that, and let's say it turned out that she wasn't, it is not a criticism of her. Everything that she saw and she heard and she reported, she did accurately.
Okay. No, I understand that point. Now, when
Okay?
I'm looking at the argument to make her older, if we're establishing that people really, in several cases, didn't have ideas of how old they are, I still think that you're not able to make an argument that she was 19. Your argument is
I,
really that people had no idea how old they were.
I'm not making the argument that she was 19, right? I am presenting that there is a scholarly view, and I've given the names of those scholars, and based on historic events that happened during her lifetime and other people around her age that gave those arguments as well. Now, personally, like I said, I think the hadith in Bukhari and Muslim are the strongest. Chain wise, no doubt to their strength to it, right? But again, this is not a creedal matter. This is not a moral matter. This is an issue of just putting dates together. She was at an age that was acceptable at the time, that they waited for the marriage to consummate, for her to be physically and emotionally ready as the people of that time were. Now, if you ask me what was her exact age, 6 or 7 at the time of engagement, not marriage, or 9 and so on at the time of marriage, or as other scholars have said, 14 years of age around at the time of engagement and 17 to 18 at the time of marriage, I would say, well, there's evidences this way, which is the ayah of Aisha radiallahu anha, and there are evidences the other way, like the historic events that she could not have reported at that age regarding the ayat or certain tafsir and so on, like the issue of the pills and so on. So I would present those arguments. I don't need to make her older or younger. Right? Doesn't really matter to me. Whatever age she was acceptable in natural state of a body being ready, of haid and menses, and physically, and a mental state and a cultural societal state. So I'm perfectly fine. But what I do like to do is to present some of the views of other scholars and some of the historical background regarding the age of Rebecca, for example. When I gave those references, when you get some time, just look them up. It's not about simultaneous. I
Oh,
mean, if you're
I'm
90
aware
at the
of
time,
it.
okay,
I've heard
yeah.
that
So I mean,
argument
have you read the
before.
commentary of Rashi, for example?
I don't know exactly who else
Yeah.
commentary,
So
but I've read a lot. But the
so
traditional
if you look
narrative
at
is you have to assume that Genesis 22 and Genesis 23 ran right into each other, and that all three events happened at the same time. The
no,
problem with
so
that, though,
we're
is
talking.
that
Hold on, I just want to understand that. So when we look at
Mhm,
Sarah being 90 when
mhm,
Abraham was 100, that does not
mhm,
affect and her dying at 127. That's the same
mhm.
person's timeline. And Isaac being
Yes.
born is going
Mhm,
to be the same. It's not like we're taking two different timelines.
mhm,
We're just trying to figure out ages by the births and deaths of people that are all interrelated,
mhm,
right? And that's why this is not from a Muslim source. This is not like some Muslim went.
mhm.
And if you get the times, look at the
No, it's
Jewish
from
sources.
a rabbinical source. I've definitely read it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So when they look
it
at it,
assumes
they
though.
put it together from a singular timeline, meaning they put together one timeline. Look at Rebecca. They look at Rebecca's
Mhm,
birth and the marriage and death of Sarah and
Um,
Abraham and Isaac, straight down the line. And I've got a
So it
graph,
doesn't
maybe if you
actually
want.
put together a timeline. What it does is, and I can, simplebible.com has a great article on it, and it will
Sure.
actually go people step by step. But what it does is it takes three events and it sandwiches them together, and it assumes that all three events happen back to back and almost simultaneously. But you can't do
I don't,
that.
I don't,
That's
I
bad.
don't see how that. So let me just. I mean, instead of going to a website, let me take it down. Okay. So when
Mhm.
she was 90, when Abraham was 100, Genesis 17,
Yep.
17. Is that correct?
Yep. Then Abraham was 100, Genesis 21:5.
Okay. Excellent. Sarah died at 127. Is that something that's sandwich? And that's the timeline, right?
I apologize. Somebody tried to call me in the middle of that, probably to
Oh,
ask
okay.
me why am I. So Sarah died at the age of 127, Genesis
Okay.
23, 1 through 2.
Isaac was
Isaac
born
was
at
40,
40. I was 40
Genesis
when
25,
he married.
20.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah was
Yeah.
90 when Isaac was born. So then
Mm-hmm.
Sarah being 90 at the birth of
Mm-hmm.
Isaac, This is all singular timeline, right? Isaac was
Mhm.
37 when his mother died, right? Singular timeline going. I mean, there's not different events. If you take
Yeah, but it's
37,
because. But look,
sure.
if you look right there, it goes right where I was saying. You have to assume that Genesis 22 and Genesis 23 were saying that they were the same report at the same time. Um, the
I don't understand that because
and
Isaac
this
is a
website actually
son of
brings
Sarah, right?
down a lot of good.
Forget
Yes,
websites. Me and you can have this conversation right now. So if Isaac
mm,
is a son of Sarah, and Isaac was 37 when his mother died, and his mother's age is given, and her
mhm.
Rebecca being born, well, Isaac being 40 when Rebecca was born. So that is the same
So
timeline. So
Genesis
if Rebecca is
22
born,
23. Sorry, Genesis 22 23. Uh, it's the betrothal begotten Rebecca. It's not part of the news that Abraham received. So when you look at that, if you combine those two, then you get that she
so
was three.
we're looking at
But if,
Genesis 25:20.
well, no, I'm explaining to you how they put this together.
No, I mean, I'm looking at the verses I've marked here, right? So Isaac was 40 when he married Rebecca. That's 25:20, right?
Yeah, I'm telling you from the website and the scholars that I'm pulling up
Forget websites. We're
what their
looking at
argument is.
actual verses, though,
Well,
right?
here's the thing, though,
Isaac being
and you can
37.
appreciate. I mean, you can appreciate this as being a Muslim. I can read the Quran, but if I don't
Sure,
have the this context or the Hadith or the
sure, sure,
Sunnah,
sure.
you
So
would
if you
say,
can
James,
bring
don't
me,
just read Surah
no, no,
9.
I'm with you, James. Read Surah 9, no
Hmm.
problem. I will bring you the hadith as an actual historic context of it. No problem with that. But if there is a timeline given, and it gives clear lyrics, then in the Quran, for example, bring it to me. I have no problem. I will not answer you just with websites. I will give you actual evidences from the Quran itself or from Sahih, authentic narrations for people that were there when those ayat were revealed. For example, Surah 9, right? When we talk about the context of battles, right? We can give you Asbab al-Nuzul, which is that this was during the aspects of this battle. How do we know that? We not just that I make that up. We will tell you this companion who was there when these verses were revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, explain that with chains of narrations you can verify, right? So, in the same way, if you can give us textual evidence, sure. But I mean, websites will try to spin things. I looked at this not from a Muslim perspective originally, looking at rabbinic writings of Jewish scholars who were experts in the Old Testament, and I made a graph myself. I wrote it all out,
Well, the
right?
problem with that is, even from your theological perspective, you don't believe that those scriptures are valid or that the
Yeah,
history
I
was
agree.
preserved.
Sure,
So
but
it's
that's not the
kind of
point,
like
right?
you're
The
looking
point.
back at a mess and you're saying that I'm going to make this argument from what I believe is a
No,
mess.
not at all. The point is, if somebody's coming from a Christian perspective, then they believe that this is the words of God. This is the
It's an
Bible,
internal
right?
critique.
Well, no, it's
So
not an
now,
internal critique because I told him that three events were smashed together, and he's trying to force
but
the
they're not.
text to read
But
straight
I'm
through.
trying to understand
And
how
when
you
I
come with that when you
mentioned
look at
to
it.
you,
Okay.
but when
But
I mentioned to you when the betrothal was, and I give you that scripture, you still want to take back to the three that are smashed.
I didn't even bring up that scriptures. I mean, I'm giving you the dates from the scriptures that I brought up, right?
Well, no, the events, how they're all smashed together, and then I read for you.
So
Try to pull it up again.
let me read down the chain, and then you tell me where they're not related. Okay. So Sarah was 90 when Abraham was 100. Is that correct?
Yeah, we can go through, and actually, I will take this
Sure.
link and I will shoot it into the chat so everyone else can. And I don't want to keep up all your time because I know there are
No,
other people back here. I do
no
enjoy the
problem.
spirited back and forth.
Great. I mean, anytime you want, come to San Diego. We'll discuss it at the park.